the judgment, there is actually a little booklet over there if you can get one and take it with you. But the argument that Joe Costa and those are trying to peddle is basically that this happened before the Lisbon Treaty, and that if you had the Lisbon Treaty it couldn't happen. But in actual fact that's not the case, because in the judgment the European Court of Justice actually said that while the Charter was not in force yet, they had actually taken that into account. So they'd actually taken it into account in the judgment. And I think, as far as I know, it's mentioned in this booklet. If not, if you get onto people.ie website, there's a few different things, because one of our secretaries is actually a head of a trade union, and they've done quite a lot of work on this whole Charter of Fundamental Rights and the impact of the European Court of Justice rulings. But it was clear from the judgment that they took it into account that while the Charter was not, and the treaty was not enforced, and the Charter was not enforced, they took the Charter into account in their judgment. And the judgments also make it quite clear that, you know, our fundamental rights are fundamental so long as they don't conflict with the interests of the market. So they're fundamental, but not that fundamental. Yeah, the Bosch, that's correct. Bosch did actually fund, after the French and Dutch voted no to the EU constitution, the heads of state, there was a get-together of these EU Eurocrats, and it was actually facilitated by Bosch. Now, if you go to, there's a website called Bonde, B-O-N-D-E, bond.com. There's a booklet on that by Jens Peter Bonde, the Danish MEP. In fact, he's in Ireland at the moment, but he wrote a book on that, outlining the whole thing. Now, I don't have any with me, unfortunately, tonight. There's the one with the strawberry on it. Yeah. But it actually gives a great sort of little history of what happened after the French and Dutch voted no, and how they got around it, and how they deliberately organised in such a way that they wanted to avoid referendums, and they had a consensus that they would avoid referendums in all member states. But unfortunately in Ireland, because of the Crotty judgment, a few of the Crotties who are here tonight, unfortunately because of the Crotty judgment, they couldn't avoid the referendum in Ireland. That was the thing. But they were able to avoid it in all other countries. And the book actually goes through it in quite a detail, and it was Bosch that actually paid for the hotels, etc. in relation to that. Yeah. But if you go to bonde.com, you get the little booklet, and you can download it. We have a few copies, but I didn't bring them with me. It's going up. Yeah, I mean, you're right. I suppose one of the problems with the no side is that we have very little resources. We have some booklets, but I know the People's Movement are doing posters, the Campaign Against the Constitution are doing posters, and I don't know. Oh well, the People's Movement are doing posters, and I think there'll be probably some other groups that are doing posters as well, some posters. So it's very difficult to fund a campaign like this if you don't have huge resources. But we are definitely doing posters, and they will be going up, and if there's anyone who can help put them up, it would be great. What is the alternative? Well, I think you're right in relation to the message that's been gotten across at the moment is that somehow we have no alternative, and it's about being in or out of Europe. That's the thing. The message is that somehow this is all about European membership, but in actual fact, I think one of the things people should keep in mind is to be pro-European should be to be anti the Lisbon Treaty, because the Lisbon Treaty is not in the interest of citizens of Europe, and if we vote it down, I think there is a better way. It provides an opportunity to open up debate right across Europe, because there are loads of groups all over Europe and citizens all over Europe who are really keeping their fingers crossed, hoping that Ireland says no, because then that would give them the opportunity to push for open debate, because most people have been denied a say on this, and the EU leaders have openly admitted we're not going to let them have a say because we know they don't support us on it. So the whole sort of kind of foundations that the EU is being built on for the future is completely undemocratic. There's no democratic foundations there at all. So we need to challenge that, and the only way we can challenge it is by saying no to Lisbon, because there's going to be, I think, a huge uprising right across Europe from citizens groups all over the place who want to see a different approach to decision making in Europe and to a different type of it.
We need to have a hand in Europe. I just think it's ludicrous. I mean, we're not going anywhere. Just because we vote no to this doesn't mean we're all of a sudden going to be shifted near to Iceland. You know, it's not. There is no movement away from it if we vote against it. And secondly, what worries me today, because is the trade unionists for yes votes that came out very strongly with their different launches today, and also if anybody read the impact opinion piece in the Irish Times today, which makes a bid for trade unionists to vote yes to this on the basis of the Charter for Fundamental Rights. I mean, Patricia's absolutely right in what she says. You know, it is entirely aspirational, the Charter for Fundamental Rights, and it is only to do with European law and does not actually surpass Irish law at any point. And even the guy who was writing the Irish Times today, I just have to read out this bit because it is very important that we notice how aspirational they're being about how effective the Charter for Fundamental Rights could be. He finishes his piece saying, Lisbon ratification could be very significant on the controversial issue of Irish collective bargaining rights. If the treaty is ratified and if the Charter is given full legal force, unions would be free to take a suitable Irish take on collective bargaining rights to the labour force, which could then refer to the ECJ under Article whatever. And if that was successful, such a case would automatically override Irish case law. How many ifs and how many buts are there in that sentence? This is what he is basing. This is what one of the biggest public sector trade unions in the country is basing their call for a yes vote. I think that shows really what is weak about the trade union movement rather than what is good about either the Lisbon Treaty or the Charter for Fundamental Rights. On that basis we should reject it, and we shouldn't be bought in by any of those ideas.
You should know, by the way, that the General Secretary of that particular union got a freebie trip to Florida for €7,000 courtesy of taxpayers. I'm sure that had a factor in it. I mean, there's a substantial element of the trade union leadership that are basically corrupt, and they have no interest in actually defending workers' rights. Maybe they're forced to do, but I mean, anybody who goes off on a trip to Florida that costs them $7,000. This is the head honcho of Impact. I mean, how can anybody take these people seriously?
The economic arguments. If you notice that since the no vote, the yes side and the government and political establishment have been basically using the economic crisis as somehow a scare tactic to try and frighten people into voting yes next time around. Now, there are a few things that need to be, they need to be challenged on. First of all, the economic crisis is coming whether we voted yes or no to Lisbon. It was coming. Secondly, the same people who are asking us now to trust them on the Lisbon Treaty are the same people who told us to trust them on the economy, and look where it got us. The other thing is that the type of economic approach that is in the Lisbon Treaty, or the Lisbon Treaty is built on, is the exact economic approach that has brought the financial crisis, not just in Ireland but internationally. So why in heaven's name, I mean, in some ways economically the Lisbon Treaty is out of date. It was drafted up at a time when political leaders didn't even realise or were refusing to admit that the economic approach that was been taken by the international community was heading for disaster. So it's a complete folly to endorse a treaty that enshrines this type of an economic approach into the EU treaty. And the other thing, Ireland is in a much worse situation than many countries in Europe, and I think it's a foregone conclusion that many countries in Europe are going to recover much quicker than Ireland. And what happens when the European Central Bank, while interest rates may be low at the moment, the European Central Bank has always made its decisions based on what Germany and the big countries want. As soon as Germany and the other countries start to recover, interest rates are going to go up. What about the people in this country who have either lost their jobs or are working for less money or whatever, have huge mortgages for properties that aren't even worth the value that they paid for them, and they're having to pay huge mortgages with an increased interest rate? I mean, this is something that no one is addressing. So I think the economic arguments are some of the weakest arguments that you could actually use to support this treaty. And I think, as you're saying in relation to NAMA as well, there's quite a connection there, and every opportunity should be used to highlight that, plus highlight, these people who are wanting us to just, for the moment, just on this one issue, put aside everything else and the mismanagement and the misconduct and the corruption and the mistrust, and put that all aside for 1 minute and trust them in Lisbon. Right,